Within the Australian home elevator industry, there are three main types of lifts. One is the through floor lifts or a shaftless lift. The next category up from that is the shafted swing door home elevators, similar to the one behind me. And then the next category above that is a shafted automatic sliding door lift, which is more common in the commercial industry. The entry-level sector of the home elevator industry is what we call a through-floor lift or a shaftless lift, as in the product does not require a lift shaft and does not run inside of a lift shaft, okay? So these products have been specifically designed to be mainly retrofitted into an existing two-story home, okay? And that particular home does not have any allowances or provisions for a home elevator. And that is the main design focus for these types of products. There are plenty of other products out there on the market besides this one. They all offer various different features and safety, and there's a lot to consider. This part of the industry has absolutely exploded in the last 5 to 10 years, just with obviously the baby boomer demographic and them not wanting to leave their homes. And sometimes there is some crossover integration for this type of product for a second floor edition perhaps, where they're really trying to pull back some costs, or they're really confined for space, all right? So if you're really super confined for space, then perhaps a through floor lift is the one for your client. The main differences with a through floor lift versus other types of home elevators is because they interact directly with the people. So there's no lift shaft separating the client or the user from other people in the home. So these lifts interact directly with people, therefore there's a whole bunch of other safety equipment on these types of products to allow that safe integration. And there are various different types of safety amongst other through floor lifts out there. Some of the great aspects of a through floor lift is that the allowances is basically just a hole through the mid floor and a 10 amp power point for the power supply. Happy days, cut a hole through the floor, build a lift through it. Very simple, simplistic, solves a problem with mobility and gives the end user some opulence, but also genuine mobility. On the downside of it, because these products all interact directly with people, they are quite speed restricted. And so there are government legislations in place with speed restrictions for these type of products, which I completely agree with, as well as all the extra safety features that these products tend to have. As I've previously mentioned, there's a lot of variations within this new evolving market. And some of those variations are some of the products they have. So these products tend to be all self-supporting because there is no lift shaft to support them. So they all have to be self-supporting as a result. But some of the key differences amongst all the various different product ranges out there is that some of these products have the supporting structure being the posts or guide rails further out into the middle of the room. Some of them have guide rails further back that sit more up against the wall but aren't necessarily connected to a wall. Some of these products out there have a full height door. Some of them actually have like a half height door, a gated door. That's some of the safety factors that are out there, and some of these products aren't actually automatic. Some of them do require a constant pressure. Those tend to be the products that have the half height gates, so that they require an extra level of safety, where you are required on those types of products to hold your finger on the button, and if you take your finger off the button, the lift will stop. And that sort of extra level of safety with those products is required because those products only have a half height gate. So as I said, there's a lot of different variations of products out there now. Over the last 5 years, there's been quite a few overseas manufacturers start getting in on supplying products for this specific type of this growing industry. Here we've got an example of a shafted swing door product, which is very common for the Australian home elevator industry. So as I've mentioned, these products do require a lift shaft, so shafted. Generally that's required, well, that's part of the building preparation works, so that this is something that the builder would do during the construction of the home. And there's a lot of different variations of products out there that require different things and different allowances within the design phase of the home to make sure that that integration happens properly. This particular variant here doesn't require a machinery cabinet external to the lift shaft. However, most of the hydraulic products out there, pretty much all of them on the market, will require a separate machinery cabinet external to the lift shaft, which is very common and a typically a go-to for the home elevator industry, being hydraulic and reasonably cost effective. However, things have sort of progressed these days where the electric or machine roomless options are becoming far more popular because of the price difference now has come together. So you're able to get an option of a machine roomless electric driven motor as opposed to a hydraulic driven propulsion. The other things that you're going to need to allow for in a shafted product is you obviously need a pit, a recessed pit. That is drawn into the engineering drawings for the slab. The other thing that you're going to need to understand too is that a lot of the imported lifts, such as the hydraulic ones from Italy and even the electric ones from Italy, will require a structural load-bearing lift shaft. Those sorts of products from Europe do use the lift shaft as a part of the structural lift or part of the lift. The reason for that is that the way that we build homes here in Australia is quite unique to the rest of the world, where we use a timber frame or what we call a traditional brick veneer build, and places like Europe and the majority of the world don't build homes in that manner. They build homes in like a solid concrete construction method. Therefore, those types of lifts do require a structural lift shaft because they're built for a construction industry that already has that component already. So those European lifts do integrate better into or are required to have a load-bearing lift shaft. So this is another thing to consider when you're looking at a potential lift supplier and particularly, how to integrate your design for the product, which is vital and important. So your client really needs to have a product chosen, selected, before you start doing your design, or your final design at least, because it's critical that all of these components for the specific lift are integrated into the design itself to make sure that the lift can be easily installed throughout the construction phase. Or furthermore, even if you're doing future provisions for a lift, you need to get a strong understanding from the client of what type of product they want to put in there in the future to make the correct allowances for that product. It's vital. Otherwise, the client will be left with future provisions for a lift that won't actually work. And we've seen it a lot in the industry over a lot of years, where people who have had a new home built and a lift shaft for future provisions built, but then when they come to buy a lift and have it installed, that they struggle to get any product that will actually work with the provisions that have been provided because they were just wrong. And so, yeah, getting back to it, it is key and vital to get all of the specifications for whatever potential product is going to go into the provisions correct during the build process. Otherwise, you're almost wasting your time. Now, the other types of lifts that you can get on the market these days, which integrate a bit nicer into, let's say, a typical brick veneer build, as in a timber frame home, is that there are products out there on the market these days that transfer all of the load, so they're essentially self-supporting. They transfer all of the load from the product down to the pit. So the pit being the base floor or the bottom floor recessed pit or sump. Okay, and then those types of products don't require that heavy duty solid concrete or steel framed lift shaft to support the lift, because the lift already has that structure essentially for itself. Therefore, it's designed to integrate into a brick veneer home. Another thing to note, the reason why some manufacturers like us have started integrating product with its own independent steel structure is simply cost. We do it because we're out to save a huge cost on the builder, or essentially the homeowner, to integrate our own independent steel structure into the lift shaft, therefore saving the build costs somewhere in the vicinity of $10,000 to build a timber frame lift shaft versus a solid concrete masonry lift shaft, keeping in mind that the solid concrete masonry lift shaft products from Europe do require that load-bearing wall across the full length of the entirety of the lift shaft across all levels, top to bottom. So these aren't cheap things to allow for. Also, same thing too, if there is a prefabricated steel frame that gets craned into place before the home is framed up, that steel frame will need to travel or be constructed across all levels of that particular home. As I said, there's a big cost saving there for your clients if they choose to integrate a product that's been designed for a brick veneer home. Obviously, if it's a home that's a suspended slab across all levels, not just the basement, but across all levels, then there is still a cost saving to be had with a product that doesn't require the solid concrete masonry shaft across all of those levels, because even with a suspended slab variation of build, you can get the structural engineer to basically beef up the penetration with a bit more steel through the penetration, and then you can still use a timber frame lift shaft in place of that solid concrete lift shaft, which is once again still cheaper. But these are all key things that need to go into engineering. So the client really needs to be sure about what sort of product that they want before engineering, because that's where the big cost savings are had. The third type of home elevator in the Australian market is what we call a shafted sliding door lift. Now, this type of lift you would be more familiar with in the commercial sector, particularly all of the high-rise stuff. It's all shafted sliding door product. This sector of the Australian home elevator market is definitely for the higher end types of builds. So that type of product has been around for a long time. Typically, the Australian lift market, say 20, 30 years ago, was a very small, very exclusive market, and it was less than a tenth of the size of what it is today. And those are the types of lifts that traditionally used to go into Australian homes 20 plus years ago. The main difference is obviously, as you could imagine, you've got a product that's got an automatic sliding door. Now, with those types of products, they do require generally a structural or load-bearing lift shaft, and they tend to be all from Europe. Also, too, they do require a lot more space. So those automatic sliding doors, they need to be stacked inside of the lift shaft. So when the door is open, it needs to go into essentially a wasted space or a dead space from within the lift shaft. So they're very inefficient with space as far as your layout or your footprint within your design of your home, and they do require a structural load-bearing lift shaft. Typically, 80% of your long-term maintenance cost breakdowns and repairs with that type of product will be related to the doors, okay? So they are far more mechanically complex, and they do require more maintenance costs long-term to keep them serviceable. However, there's still a strong market here for it in Australia, but it's just, it's certainly a traditional market, and it's not really a growing part of the Australian home elevator industry, because they are quite expensive to purchase, expensive to maintain, and very footprint hungry. However, there's definitely clients out there in the industry that definitely want that type of product in their home. So just a quick recap, that's the three main types of lifts that we've got in the Australian home elevator industry. I hope I've been able to demonstrate some knowledge that you guys can take with you and clear understanding on the three different types. And just to quickly recap, that was the through floor or shaftless lifts, or the shafted swing door products, or lastly, the shafted sliding door products. I hope I've been able to demonstrate a clear understanding of the three different types.